Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Doing Justice Brings Joy, where my guest today is the Honorable Mel Watt, who is released his new autobiography, The Sixth Generation, and he's here in studio with us to talk about his book and his life. It's so fascinating. Welcome, Mel, to this week's edition of Doing Justice Brings Joy.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here. This is my first podcast in life. Um, you would be surprised about that, I'm sure, because but when I was in politics, I mean, there was no such thing as a podcast. I think, or at least
That's
if there was, I never was on one.
Well, I have read this, your autobiography, The Sixth Generation, and it has made my life make sense. Okay.
I hope it's made my life make sense too.
It really
Um,
has. I have to tell you, the opening of the book with the historical legacy pieces was really just inspirational. And then I suffered from PTSD when I read your experiences at UNC Chapel Hill because I have to tell you that 15 years later, nothing had changed.
Oh, probably something had changed, but not
No,
much. Not much had changed. There was
very
a
little.
lot. There was a lot more of you than there were of us at that point.
Yes, and that, but we were like the first. My my class was the first mass uh, enrollment of black students. We came as a tribe,
Right.
but the experiences that you experienced were very parallel. Okay, like, oh, is the reason I didn't get the Moorhead because I was a black female?
Were you the first black female applicant?
No, but
No, no, it's
I, um, finalists were me and Loretta Lynch. I know we were finalists because we were in the same interview group, and both of us. I was competing with her like the entire
right.
time of high school, and we both got accepted in Bryn Mawr. We both got accepted at Radcliffe. But at UNC, I mean, and the little old ladies from Bryn Mawr and Radcliffe came down and met with us in our homes.
Right.
But we got like a perfunctory 15-minute interview for the Moorhead Scholarship. So I was enlightened.
Well,
and
there is history to everything, and
and I too had my white roommate leave my first semester in freshman year. So it was just like PTSD moments. But I just want people to know this book, if you have black sons, they need to read this book. If you have black sons who are intelligent and are struggling with their identity as brilliant black men, they need to read this book. Um, if you have sons who come from disadvantaged backgrounds and think they can't achieve anything, they need to read this book. Every black son in America needs to read this book. And it was just amazing. And if you are a civil rights advocate, attorney, person that is marching in the streets, you need to read this book. And if you are a political junkie from North Carolina or DC, you need to read this book. In fact, everybody, you need to buy this book. I haven't been so enthusiastic about a book in a long time.
Well, thank you so much. That is a high endorsement, and I appreciate it very much. I'll tell you what I tried to do. Um, you know, when you achieve a certain level of success, people kind of assume that you started there, right? And what I set out to do in this book was to set the total context for my life. I wanted to bring people into my life to understand exactly where I started. Actually, before I got here, trying to lay a basis in family that goes back all the way to 1789 and comes forward with five generations before I ever show up in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I wanted them to feel what I stepped into. I wanted them to know how I came to understand that I was black. Because, I have discussions with people all the time. I knew I was black when I came out of the womb. And I said, no, something in your life that you experienced had to educate. It took me 6 weeks to figure out what was the exact time that I realized that I was a black person. Um, and I tried to capture it in that chapter called the Black Team, right? um, and come forward from there. I wanted people to experience every experience that I had gone through in life, and some of those experiences will shock people because um, I was not a pristine youngster. I mean, I had two older brothers. We were in the streets, you know. I didn't have any sisters. I had two older brothers, and they were teaching me the ropes. And I wanted the reader to experience those things with me because I didn't want people to think, okay, this guy is some kind of saint. He's not, you know. Uh, and then when I got to segregated schools, I wanted them to experience what segregated schools was about.
Mm-hmm.
Um, for I'm still of an opinion sometimes that segregated schools did more for for black kids than integrated schools did. I'm not going to try to make that case to anybody because I think that was something, but it was an experience that educated me. And then, of course, I show up at the University of North Carolina not ever having experienced that integrated world before, and here I am. Uh, in boot camp, basically. I mean, that's what I called it. So,
I would just say the same thing.
so anyway, I'm glad that a reader like you, when they pick up this book, is grabbing every segment of it, so that they don't think that I started out as a student at UNC. Even the reasons that I ended up going to UNC. The last thing I wanted to do was go to Alabama. I wasn't trying to avoid Tuskegee or Talladega College. I mean, but the last thing you wanted to do in 1963, when I was coming out of
Yeah.
high school, was thinking about going to Alabama. And that had a major impact on me. It burdened me. There's a chapter in the book about how it burdened me over time. the decisions that I made about not going to an HBCU versus the University of North Carolina, not being involved in early in the demonstrations, um, so that I could be prepared better to do it later on. All of those things are experiences that I think can enlighten the current generation even before I get to political service and management of political campaigns.
Yeah, I think though, I think for me, those are the things that I felt the strongest about. Um, because when I met you, you were fully formed, Mel Watt. You were,
I hope I was a better person by that time, but the experiences that I had made me a better person if I was. Let me put it that way.
you were, but you were, for me and TC, you were, we're from Durham, right? So we're Camp Mickey and Camp Livonia. We so
Well, some of those stories are the first time anybody's ever gone through that experience from my perspective, right?
right.
Uh,
So reading from your perspective, but it was so when we met you, you were running against Mickey for the
the 12th district.
congressional the 12th congressional district. I was a young gun running for soil and water. My first campaign was in 1992 as well. Um, so, but we learned so much. But I thought that was going to be the most interesting part of the book for me. But what was the most interesting part of the book for me was the the ethical conflicts, not conflicts, but the ethical considerations that you made. And the lessons that you teach is that there are no wrong choices when you stand on integrity.
Right,
That when your choice is the choice that comes from your own integrity, it's not wrong for you. I think from intellectual, academic kind of thing, um, I found it fascinating that you had taken constitutional law from Judge Bork,
oh yeah. That was interesting, an interesting time in my life.
and and that, and I'm sorry I can't remember the your classmate that was instrumental in developing the alternative constitutional school of thought.
Now, Duncan Kennedy was his
Duncan
name. He went
Kennedy.
on to be a professor at Harvard Law School and develop his own theory of law. That's how smart this guy was. But here I am. He's a student in my class, and the professor is Judge Bork, who got turned down as a justice on the United States Supreme Court, and they're debating. Here's a student debating the professor about how you interpret the Constitution. It's a great way for me to learn constitutional law. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
But I also was fascinated by the fact that you were one taking it all in, um, but that I was also struck by the level of academic freedom of thought and the ability to debate freely and openly contrary opinions. And yet, Judge Bork graded his grades were high for those. If your thought process, he was more interested in the intellectual challenge and
Yeah.
your thought process than he was in whether you agreed or disagreed with his views. And how we're seeing that kind of academic freedom and ability to debate thoughts and challenge thoughts without challenging people. I found that
Yeah. No, it
interesting.
was it's I found um, it was intellectual freedom. There was no effort to indoctrinate. There was no little effort to even teach other than concepts,
Mhm.
but constant effort to make you think and debate and come up with your own ideas and be able to defend them. Um, so, in that respect, the University of North Carolina and Yale Law School were so different from each other because all I was doing at the University of North Carolina was memorizing what somebody else had taught me or somebody else said the facts were. Um, and all of a sudden, I'm thrown into this environment where there's no right or wrong answer to most of these legal issues that you're dealing with. There are people on both sides. There's a prosecutor. There's a defense attorney. Uh, you know, and there's a judge sitting there, and your job is to convince a judge or a jury what the outcome of this should be. And so, if you can't defend what your position is, uh, you're in trouble. And it took me a while to adjust to that in my first year of law school because I'd never been in that kind of environment before. In high school, I mean, I accepted. I always tell people, when I was in high school, um, the teachers told me that the shortest distance between 2 points was a straight line.
Mhm.
And then I got to college, and my college professors told me there is no such thing as a
That's a
straight
straight.
line because the world is turning all the time. And I'm saying, wait a minute now, you're interrupting my whole thought process here. Well, imagine having to debate those two ideas in law school. Is there a straight line or is there not a straight line? That's not something we debated in law school, but it gives you an example of how in law school I finally had to learn to think for myself and
Mhm.
defend what I came up with as an answer to whatever the issue was.
You know, I want to go back because I want people to really understand because I have to tell you, I have some Yale bias, but I now understand why I have it. I'll get to that later, but I want to start off in Dixie,
Oh yeah.
North Carolina, and because when I met you, I assumed without knowing that you had come from a very privileged and prosperous background, and it was um, it was certainly learning about the six generations and that there was opportunity and privilege, but that tragedy can change trajectory, but it doesn't necessarily um, you're not defined by where you start. You're defined by discipline, and you're defined by aspirations. And I
And
just think,
luck.
And
don't
luck.
don't leave out luck. Yeah, I mean, um, and I don't know which. I think all of those things are important. I mean, because some people have just had bad luck. I mean, um, they get into situations and they didn't create the situation,
Right.
but they can't get out of it. And then something happens that either makes it worse or something happens that allows them to transcend that situation
Hmm.
and move into another. And throughout my life, I feel very, very uh, privileged and happy that I have had um, breaks. I've been at these forks in the road and made what I thought was my own good decision, but something was leading me, and I'm not sure. I mean, there's one little paragraph where I talk about, you know, I knew I wasn't writing the script,
That's
right? I didn't have any power to write any script, and I didn't know whether it was God or whether it was fate or whether it was, we don't know what writes our scripts in life. I've been fortunate, and I don't want people to miss that in the book. I mean,
oh no,
I
no.
don't, I don't want to take credit for just making good decisions all the time. I made some fortunate outcome decisions. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
Um, it was it
I,
was great for me to end up at the University of North Carolina, and
I
it was great that I got denied the
more.
Morehead scholarship.
Mhm.
And that was a negative, I thought, but it ended me up at Yale Law School. So there's these kind of gives and takes in this book and in life.
In life, and I was inspired by those people along the way that kind of guided you. You were headed in one direction, and they were like, "No, this is the right way."
Yeah,
I love how a teacher um, calling you Attorney Watt
changed
kind
my
of
life.
changed your life, not because that was something, but when people then asked you, what are you going to be when you grow up? Hey, that's what it was. I mean,
That's
it
what it
was
was.
that kind of inspiration. I also loved how it wasn't an academic teacher that taught you discipline and rigor. It was a music teacher that, um, and so, and, and I also, it was warehouse employees
Yes.
that said, "You're going to college. You
Oh
have
yeah.
a chance to go to college. You're crazy. You're not going to be here in this warehouse."
Yeah.
And how even the white warehouse manager said to you, "Oh, what my life could have been if I could have gotten in college,"
Yeah.
and how they made you change, see your life beyond that warehouse. I found all of this so fascinating because
Well,
I had never, in my vision of you, the fully formed Mel Watt, who was by then a brilliant civil rights and business attorney, and a fully formed political genius and all this. I graduated from Yale Law School. I'm seeing somebody who grew up summering in Martha's Vineyard, not somebody living in Dixie, North Carolina. And
I did finally get to Martha's Vineyard when I was in college. No, when I was in Congress. Somebody said you should have a fundraiser on Martha's Vineyard. I said, "Where is Martha's Vineyard?" So, and who in Martha's Vineyard would support my political campaign. So I did. I went to Martha's Vineyard one time. I've been there one time in my life. So I did get there, but that's a whole different story. I don't even tell that story in the book. Yeah, there's so many stories that are not in the book. I mean, my biggest challenge was trying to figure out what 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 would draw readers, what would keep their attention, what are the most important turning points in life. Um, how do I let people in to who I am and what made me who I am? Um, and if I've succeeded in doing that, I think I have done exactly what I wanted to do. I never thought about this book as a means of becoming an author or making money on as a book writer. I mean, um, I needed to get some things off my chest. But
Yes.
more importantly, I needed to, this was a reconciling book for me. I had to come to grips with how did this happen? Um, what were the turning points? And I think if I've been able to capture some of those forks in the road and turning points, um, then I've been successful in this book. So I thank you for reading it, and I'm delighted that you're fascinated by so many aspects of it.
Oh, because okay, and I'm just going to tell the readers he spills a lot of tea in this book. Okay, I had no idea. I mean, there is. You were right. You were a participant in so many critical moments, both cultural touch points and political touch points in history. And as a North Carolinian, there's, being that you were part of the Chambers Ferguson law firm, um, and that, and so much, like, I wouldn't have a career. I had no idea you were this significant, but I had no idea I wouldn't have any kind of career without the foundations that you laid. The law, I mean, the law review, law journal article you wrote about tax incentives for minority built, that created the whole CDFI movement. It was an underpinning to the Community Reinvestment Act. Um, I mean, it was a foundational thought because you wrote the first academic paper about how we could use taxation and tax incentives to support minority businesses. And then you went into Charlotte and taught yourself um, real estate financing. My God, Mel Watt, you got him a call to give you
Well, I
$10.
mean, yeah, but it was all step by step, and in many ways, again, accidental. I mean, who would have thought that the very first day I returned to Charlotte in the middle of the night, I'm starting the law firm the next day, and in the middle of that night, the law office gets firebombed, right? So then where are you going to practice law? You got to move someplace temporary. Julius Chambers puts me in charge of finding where to move temporarily, but more important, he puts me in charge of finding where we're going to go long term, and that ends up with a major real estate investment development, and still one of the most significant investments in Charlotte. So, but I didn't write that script either. I mean, it just, it was put on my plate. When something it gets put on your plate, you deal with it, right? And Chambers,
But you
Chambers,
had the you had the capacity to deal with it. Not everybody could have achieved what you did. I also found that intriguing in the book too is your humility throughout the and your honesty in sharing with the reader where you had uncertainties about your capabilities, but what you strive for was, if this, I've got to accomplish this.
yeah.
This is a task that's been given to me, so I must accomplish it. And even when you were um, initially wary of your ability to do so.
Well, you got to keep. I have learned that you have to keep pushing forward, even in the midst of uncertainty, because at that time and even now, um, we're constantly breaking new ground, and there's still all these first black things and at that time there were more opportunities on a more rudimentary level to do some things as a first black person, but that's still happening. I mean, people are still breaking new ground, and and I hope young lawyers, young business people read this and get inspired to understand that they can accomplish those things. So
I think to me that there are true lessons in this book about resiliency, without about seeing adversity as just something, a hill you got to climb, and obstacle you have to overcome, and not as a barrier that prevents you from achieving goals.
and
Um,
and sometimes the negatives create the opportunities. I mean, I think I could make a good case that I never would have ended up as the director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency over basically 30, 40, 50% of the economy, the whole housing industry basically,
mhm,
had our office building not been firebombed
mm,
back in 1971. I mean, because at that point I had to learn to develop to do a major real estate development, and you learn to do the intricate parts of real estate development, and that ends you up with the ability to understand concepts that you otherwise would not have just not have understood. And so, and that all, I mean, a lot of that just came out of a negative experience, right?
mhm.
Who would have ever thought that somebody would firebomb a law office, and somebody comes out of those ashes and ends up using it to head a major component of the U.S. economy, the housing market. So, I can't be arrogant about that. Yeah, I took advantage of opportunities, positive and negative, that were presented to me, but I didn't create those opportunities. Um, I'm proud that I took advantage of some of the opportunities, but I didn't create them, and I don't want people to walk away from this book thinking um, that
And they won't. And
I
they
hope.
won't.
Yeah, good.
They won't. They'll come back. I think people when they read this book will say have a different mindset about what they can achieve with the opportunities or the barriers that are in front of them. That there is opportunity on the other side. That if you put your mind to it, if you I think that for me, you undervalued your brilliance. And I know that as an individual, you can't do that, but you know that for me, again, there's so much tea in this book that I want to talk. I was like, oh, I don't have enough time, but for me, the seminal point of our intersection was in the Miller Watt Frank um, anti-predatory that ended up being Dodd-Frank legislation that you introduced as we jointly, you and I, were fighting to protect and preserve Black home ownership and Black wealth, starting from here in North Carolina, and how you and Brad Miller really led that fight nationally. And then the work that you all did got converted to the Dodd Frank Act. I don't know how y'all's name got off of it, but
Well,
I
the meltdown. I mean, the meltdown made that possible, and I'm delighted that I got a chance to give Brad Miller his flowers for because you know basically that came out of North Carolina. The whole concept of ability to repay a
right.
loan
That's right.
and having to assess the borrower's ability to repay a loan came out of North Carolina, and it came not through me; it came through Brad Miller.
Yes, because he
And
was in the state
yeah,
senate
he was in the
when they first.
state legislature before he came to Congress, and he
Mhm.
brought that idea with him. And then, of course, we picked it up, and it became the basic pillar of the real estate part of Dodd Frank. The same concept, right?
And one of the while they were while we were working on that piece of legislation, one thing people don't know is originally they had proposed that the ability you had to have 20% down payment. And when advocates protested that, um, they said, okay, we'll cut it to 10%. And that there were some of us who did the math who said we'd rather have 20% than 10%
Yeah, yeah.
because 80% of white people could get a loan at 10% down payment, but only 5% of black and brown people would be able to get a loan at 10%. So I'd rather nobody have one than perpetuate the, the wealth.
Again, there are no right or wrong answers here. I mean, we were you're in these kind of dilemmas all the time. You get an opportunity. Okay, now what's going to work the best for us?
But again, y'all were successful in getting it to 5%. And so thank you. Love you for that.
Yeah. No, I think we were ultimately we got it basically to a point where you just had to, you know, you had to really understand your ability to pay,
Hmm.
and it was more down payment that was impeding people from getting into home ownership than anything else. So when people when groups like yours came up with the down payment assistance,
Hmm.
um, that just opened up a whole new avenue. And then of course the pushback to that was, well, if somebody else is providing a down payment, that doesn't give the homeowner a dog in the fight. So they're not going to fight to keep their home. I said, no, you know, if we can get people into home ownership, they're going to realize that that opens up a whole new avenue for them,
That's right.
for Black people in particular, because you know, during the economic meltdown, um, Black people fought. I mean, they cut the amount of food they were buying. They cut
That's
everything, but they were not going to lose their homes, right?
right. And those borrowers who were in CRA loans did not get foreclosed on
Right.
during the they did not lose their homes. They were not part of the crisis. They were because they were in safe, affordable loans. CRA products were safe, affordable products. Um, but the moral hazard, um, thing that they always talked about, that was actually rich white people who were doing that, not middle class, hardworking Americans of any race,
Yeah.
that were, gaming the system like that. That was, that was the same people that are trying to game the system today.
Yep. Get no argument out of me on that.
And what I'm gonna just spend a few minutes. What do you think about what's going on with FHFA right now under Pulte and some of the rollbacks and of tried and true economic housing policy that is being undermined for no apparent reason than, extracting wealth.
Well, I don't know that I can do anything other than shake my head. I mean, part of the problem was, um, most people don't realize that I was the only truly independent director of the Federal Housing Finance Agency. Um, right at the end of my term, there was litigation about whether you could constitutionally set up an agency like that, and the United States Supreme Court, really in an effort to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau,
Hmm.
more so than to get rid of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, decided that all of these agencies had to be under the president and answer to the president. The great thing about my 5 years over there is that I didn't have to answer to the president. In fact, there were a couple of times when even President Obama called and said, or his people called and said, "Would you do certain things?" And I would say, "No, my responsibility is to protect the housing market. Your responsibility is to do politics. I'm over here to do not to do politics, right?"
Hmm.
So um, when the Supreme Court put FHFA and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau back under the president, all that did was politicize it, and that laid the groundwork for Pulte to come in and do what he's been doing until he finally, I think, he got nominated to do something else finally. Uh, no, it's but some of the things that we put into effect during that period of time, the 5 years that I was there, are still standard in the mortgage industry.
Yes.
You still got to assess people's ability to
To
repay,
repay.
right?
That's right.
And you still, and lenders now don't use foreclosure as the first option. They got to work through multiple options short of foreclosing on a house or on a property before they get to foreclosure. And those are the steps that we put into place that protect the housing market. And while he's done a lot of crazy political stuff, the industry is not going to let him go back to the old standards that they used to apply, where you could just walk into and give your buddy a loan, even
Hmm.
though they didn't have the ability to pay the loan. So, I, you know, I'm distressed about the politics that's going on over there, but I'm also encouraged by the fact that we put enough infrastructure in and rules in place that finally the mortgage industry understood that you don't have to go and foreclose on somebody's house just because they missed two payments.
Right.
There are a whole set of options that you can pursue that are not only beneficial to the homeowner, but are also beneficial to the lender.
That's
Because, nobody wants to own a foreclosed house. But it took lenders a long time to figure that out. And
yes.
we have to learn them that.
Yes, we did. Let me, one of the things that you just said was when you got a phone call, you said to the president, "You do the political stuff. I'm here to do the policy stuff." That's actually in the book. I was really surprised how you became an accidental senator, a state senator,
Oh, yeah. My goodness.
by actually standing up in a meeting and saying, "I'm not the right guy for this because I'm just going to be me. I'm going to say what I got to say. I'm going to do what I got to do, and
That was
y'all
the
may
wrong
not
speech
like
I
it."
gave that night. That was definitely the wrong speech. That's why the chapter is called "Wrong Time, Wrong Speech" or something like that. That chapter is called. But I mean, the last thing on my mind that night was ending up in a meeting where I'm going to the state senate. It was just one of those things that I couldn't have orchestrated. And I enjoyed the 2 years that I served in the state senate, but the timing was just it was just terrible for me. I mean, my boys were growing up, and I came out of a home with no father in it, and I was saying, look, I got to get out of here. I'm sorry. This is important stuff, but it ain't as important for me to be doing it right now
But
because
you,
I got other responsibilities.
yet you served 2 years, but you made a lasting impression on not just on your on District 33 in Charlotte, but you made a lasting impression that allowed you to become the first um, of two African Americans to return from North Carolina to the Congress in 1992. And you had to beat some formidable competition
Yes, we
along
did.
the way. In
Fortunately, all of them are my friends now. I love making the show. And I love Larry Little. I love my friend from Greensboro
uh,
who was. No, it
but
was a high level race that we conducted there.
TC and I, we met and married on Mickey's campaign. We were on Mickey's campaign volunteers when we met and married when he was running against Tim Valentine.
Yeah,
And, and apparently he might have lost that race because all of us were meeting and marrying. I think GK married his Gene on that campaign. There were more marriages during that campaign
I didn't know that.
than there was
Y'all had some other priorities, it seems like.
apparently. But so we were certainly committed to the Camp Mickey, but TC and I were in the second congressional district. Um, they had divided Durham into the 12th.
Right, right.
To weaken Durham, they had divided it into the 12th and into the second. And so after you had won the nomination, but we were selecting delegates for the DNC, um, that coalition you built with Greensboro, Charlotte, in Winston-Salem locked out all the Durham committee and all the Durham folks that were running for delegate got locked out. Not a
Right.
single person got one. And TC and I, the second congressional district, had an unaffiliated delegate.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that. Okay. Now you're giving me history that I didn't know.
And so, cause, and so we signed up. I signed up to run as an unaffiliated delegate, undeclared delegate, because everybody was signing up to be a Clinton delegate, right?
Right.
I mean, and but there, so Doug Berger and I were running for unaffiliated delegate, and it was like, well, if the seat is for a male, then it would be Doug's. If it was a female, then it would be mine. And that was based on how they had divided up the Clinton delegates, which was going to be. And so I ended up getting the unaffiliated delegate spot
Hmm.
for the 92 convention. So when we went to the Durham committee meeting the next that next Thursday, and we were like, "Hey, I got to be the unaffiliated delegate in the second congressional district." They were like, "What? How? Who told you to do that?" That's what Dr. A said. She was like,
Right. Right.
"Who told you could do that?" And and then we found out that they had got like wiped out. Well, now I know why, because never knew the backstory. But you and Don Baker made
That was
that
not
happen.
my intent. That was not my intent. I guarantee you. I tell you one thing, though. One of the highest points in my political life was when Lavonia Allison told me years later. I mean, it just sank my heart completely. Lavonia Allison looking at me and saying, I know I didn't start out on your team, but you're the best representative Durham has ever had. And I said, you don't know how much that makes me happy, Lavonia. And Livonia and I were just became, she was a wonderful person, but
Oh,
she loved some Mickey Michaud.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So, but yeah, your book is just amazing. And you know, Don Baker, I, I often wonder, because he was also a mentor to me and T growing up
Yeah,
in politics, and just with the short legacy he had. But if he had, man, what would our world be? He was, he was, he was the best political mind organizer I ever met.
I agree with you. And he was responsible for me going to the state senate, and then he was responsible for all of the organizing for Harvey Gantt
Mhm.
to become a city council person and mayor of Charlotte. Then he was the responsible person when Harvey ran for the United States Senate against Jesse Helms. He was the responsible person.
TC and Christie were working on Hunt's campaign during the um, Gantt campaign, and Governor Hunt detailed them to Don, and that's how they skilled up. I
Yeah.
mean, he skilled them up.
No, he was quite an amazing man, and just a wonderful friend. And I have to give Harvey Gantt credit for making me write the chapter this title "Heart and Soul Walk On" in the book, because There's been so much of Don Baker in the book,
Mm-hmm.
and Don passed away as a result of an unfortunate illness. And Harvey said to me, you can't just leave it out there. You can't leave him out there. You gotta close out his life in this book, right? And that's where that chapter idea, and I agreed with him. I mean, I'd been struggling with how do you do that, but that chapter and the chapter where I close out my brother's life called
Mm-hmm.
Brotherhood.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the two, perhaps the two most emotional chapters I had to write in this book, because I was closing out uh, friendships with people that had meant so much to me, and in Don's case, had meant so much to the whole state.
Yes.
Even though he was always behind the scenes and never taking credit for it. Just an amazing man. Yeah.
Um, and just again, the family relationships throughout the book, your brothers and their influence on your life, and your all, and how you all always had each other's back. I think there, like I said at the beginning, there's so much about life
Life.
lessons in this book. Um, there's something in it for everyone. There's even a Stevie Wonder story in here,
There's
people.
a Stevie Wonder story. Yes, one of my favorite chapters in the book is the Stevie Wonder story, which is a whole. I mean, that's a whole. But again, who would have ever thought that a tragedy like an automobile accident would lead to that chapter? I mean, it was just an amazing set of circumstances that led to that, and I learned so much from my experiences with him. Just a wonderful, wonderful man, and I'm blessed to have had that experience. I'm blessed to have played footsies with stars at funeral services. How do you make this stuff up? I mean, and all of it's true. I mean,
All of it's true.
all of it's true.
And it was fun. It was a fun read for me because there was some, you were in the room where it happened, okay, and some of us, we were outside the door when you all announced what happened, but being able to peek in the room and find out what was going on in there, it was so much fun.
Well,
um, I just cannot more strongly um, it, encourage people to purchase this book. I think that this should be required Black History Month reading, so we get something new other than we
well, we're
get.
gonna we're gonna try to put together some readings and events, book signings and what have you in Durham, because Durham is so integral
Mhm.
to this. Greensboro is integral to it. Winston-Salem is integral to it, and of course Charlotte is integral to it. But um, people ask me all the time, when did you start writing this book? I said, well, I've been writing this book now for 81 years, 80 years now. I started writing it when I guess I actually started writing it because it goes back five generations before me. So it was being written before I even arrived. But then I wrote it for the next 80 years. And it's a true story of a black man coming of age in a society that's dominated by white men. That's really what it is.
It really
And
is, and I think that for me, that's why I want my sons to read this. That's why I believe every black child must read this. The scenes that you, over and over there, it came through. Oh, I don't know how to frame it, but it felt like resentment that you had to, that the competition was like, if you were competing on a level playing field, you'd have been a mile and a half ahead of them. But you um, were being, oh, that when he said that you would be an ordinary student at Yale or Harvard, I could feel like you just wanted to, oh yeah, is that what you think? And cut him with a knife. I felt like you just wanted to cut him with a knife on that one.
no,
And
no. He did
and
me a favor. He did me a favor when he said that. I mean, this actually turns out to be one of the biggest favors that ever happened to me. So,
but he said,
how can I be resentful of it?
no, no, but it's not resentful. I don't know. It was like the, are you saying that that I'm just good enough for you and see I'm not good enough for you? I mean it, that thing. And then the scene where you describe how your classmate saw all the lights on in the dorm rooms and rushed to get back to his room because he knew they were up late studying and he had to get back to his room to study.
Yeah,
And and that motivation that you, we were always competing against some white standard that was ridiculous. And again, like I said, I had real PTSD um, reading the that segment of your history. I was like, yep. And when when I was testifying in front of you at um, in Congress, and I was on the panel with Martin and
Monique's.
and
Yeah,
we were testifying. We were on the same panel. Um, there was a, when I went back and read through the transcripts, it seemed like all the questions I was getting was from the other Congress people, was like condescending. It was like they thought I wouldn't be able to respond except from an emotional point of view, that I really didn't understand the policy, the
mhm,
legislation, or the math
yeah,
behind it. So they were going to trip me up by asking me the questions,
yeah.
um, to make, to make the record raggedy. And I was like, when I was testifying, I didn't have a problem. I knew the answer, so it wasn't a problem.
Right, right.
But when I went back and read the transcript, I was like, oh, the colored girl wasn't supposed to be able to answer this question.
Well, that's a standard white privilege assumption, you know. And we deal with it. We live in two different worlds.
Hmm.
We live in a black world, and we live in a world that's dominated by white men, and primarily white men historically.
Hmm.
And um, and the fact that we have been able as black people to navigate both of those worlds effectively is a testament to all of us.
Yes,
It is.
yes. And your book gives folks a way to navigate, and to understand that you're not navigating these waters alone, that
Right.
there is community, that there is opportunity, that the brightest, that people will support you. They may not, those men in that warehouse, I think they were a critical turning point.
They were a critical turning point. You're absolutely right because, I was making, $40 a week was a lot of money at that time, and I said, well, I think I can get comfortable working in a warehouse and making $40 a week. And these guys were saying, boy, if you don't get out of here and get your ass in college, if you got the opportunity to go to college and you're smart enough to do it, if you don't get out of here, you're out of your mind. So yeah, that was a critical summer for me. And years later, when I was in Congress, one of them died, and I went to the funeral, snuck in the back door of the funeral, and the minister recognized me, and he said, "Congressman Watt's here." And I'm not sure why, but I want him to come up and say something. And I got a chance to go up and tell the story about how and their kids, their grandchildren, finally got to hear that story. And I wanted so much for people to understand that story in this book. Um, you know, because you're absolutely right. It was a critical turning point in my life.
And that's the thing that I love about this book is it's those kind of ordinary moments. Um, Going to a church service, going, riding down, Brooklyn in the Brooklyn neighborhood, and how you transform the neighborhood, and how, again, the stories of how they destroyed the Brooklyn neighborhood, through urban renewal. And, I did not realize that had happened in Charlotte the
Oh
same
yeah,
way
yeah,
it happened at Hayti. We talk
yeah,
about
yeah,
Hayti all the time,
yeah.
but that the destruction of the Brooklyn community in Charlotte, um, was also critical to our history, and the loss. And there are other neighborhoods in Charlotte that have been wiped away, but that was a critical turning point.
Yeah. And therein lies the story of why the 12th congressional district made sense,
Hmm.
you know, because the same experiences that were happening in Brooklyn were happening in Hayti and Durham. Yeah,
Hmm.
Brooklyn and Charlotte, Hayti and Durham, different parts of Winston-Salem, different parts of Greensboro, different parts of High Point, and to tie all of those communities together into an urban coalition,
Hmm.
um, that wasn't our idea. I mean, they were tied together because the highways had run through black communities of each one of those cities. And they were tied together because the HBCUs were not allowed to play against the white colleges that were in close proximity to them. So they had to form the CIAA. And you can go on and on and on about and when the Supreme Court was saying, well, this doesn't make sense. Hey, it makes sense for black people because finally we get a voice to be able to stand up and unify ourselves the way against what you have tried to divide and conquer.
Yeah.
And so, I thought, it was just wonderful to represent a congressional district that ran from basically Gastonia, North Carolina, on the south to Durham, North Carolina, on the north, and 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 do it with integrity and know
Yes.
who I answered to, right?
Yes.
Um, I will tell you, the bank. I was on the House Financial Services, the banking committee in the House,
Hmm.
and every bank wanted me to bank with them. I still bank at Mechanics and Farmers Bank. My account is still at Mechanics and Farmers Bank, right?
Well, that'll be
Um,
turning into Optus Bank.
yeah, I know. I saw your interview last week, and I'd already gotten a notice about it as a depositor at Mechanics and Farmers. So you know, but those are the stories that have tied us together in ways that people need to appreciate, and I hope I at least did a smattering of allowing people to understand that in this book. Um,
You have done an amazing job in this book, and your life is a legacy of integrity and there there was again a line you're so eloquent, right? Just so eloquent, and I guess you got taught all that in all the debates and the because oh, this is one story. I don't want to give away the whole book, but it's so good. Um,
I'm
the
loving this conversation. Go ahead.
why I hate Yale, like Yaleys. You're the only Yalie I have ever liked, but now I understand why. Okay, y'all, you and Judge Clay,
Yeah,
y'all acted up so bad that Yale started recruiting a different kind of black intellect.
yeah, yep. They did. They did. Eric Clay.
And
You can attribute that to Eric Clay from Durham, North Carolina.
I know it was just Clay. Okay, because he went straight Durham on them. Okay,
Yeah, you
he
went
was
straight Durham
bullshit.
on him. You're
He
absolutely
was
right.
bull city all the way. I can't even blame him. But you
No, and he landed on his feet. He
but
landed on his feet.
but I love the lessons learned there. That um, you saved the day for a true judicial giant, and he could have gotten expelled from school because he was out there in them streets. You know me. I made the same choices he made.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I hope Eric doesn't mind me putting that whole story
No, but
on.
it was informative. One, different roads lead to similar outcomes. It reinforced that in that that story and Reverend Kojo's story again. I felt like, oh, I didn't know that about them. I mean, it like I knew them, but I didn't know them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well,
But
Kojo.
that but that as long as you make the at the you stand on your own integrity, it's not a wrong choice.
Yeah, I have great admiration for Eric Clay, Kojo Nantambu, Ronnie Ross.
Ronnie
Um,
Ross,
I
he and
mean,
Ronnie Ross at UNC made the
yeah,
same choices.
yeah, made those choices, and sometimes they got hurt by it, but they never lost their manhood in the process, and all of them stood up, and and I'm happy to say that. that Ronnie went back to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, and so if you just stand up and stand your ground, sometimes it has consequences short term, but it makes you a man long term.
And
Uh,
that's why I need every black man to give his son this book, because this book is not just about, the examples in this book are not just Mel Watt's life. It's the black men in this book that stand on 10. Okay, it's the black men in this book who stand on integrity. The black, making a choice to, you know, that if you say that you had no intent, you'd walk away, but you would not tell a lie.
not tell a lie.
You know,
Even when you practice telling the lie, he couldn't do
you, you couldn't do it.
it. No,
You
uh,
know that if you
real
use
life
your government,
experiences.
you know that if you use your government name, you might walk out that room with no time, and you stand on your African name and say who you are. You know the consequences,
You know the consequences, yes.
and you choose, Reverend Kojo, to say your name proudly and take that year.
Yeah. Well, I was actually in Wilmington this past weekend. Went to Kojo's church and told his congregation the true story of Kojo Nantambu. Just a wonderful, wonderful man, and
He is a great,
um,
great man.
yeah.
And
Uh,
and to have these people in my life and not know, this is like, I was like sipping tea in this book. I was like,
yeah.
oh, is that what? Oh, it was just, it's just a great read.
Well, it was the
It's just a
first time
great.
I'd ever put anybody on the witness stand and not know what they were going to say their name was when I asked them their name. So, and it's the first and only time that ever happened to me in the practice of law. So,
And I
um,
loved how the two stories. Um, One, don't put your client on the stand, and the other one, you put your client on the stand, but the outcomes, you know, that that as a lawyer, that's your ethical. All you can do is um, give them an honest assessment of their choices and
Stella,
of
I'm going to
what the
tell you one thing.
consequences.
I'm going to tell you one thing. I know you have read this book from cover to cover because,
I know.
and I am so pleased that you have, and I'm pleased that you're reacting to it exactly the way I would love for people to react to it. I mean, I just because these are the stories that make us who we are, and and we don't start out being one way or the other. We learn these things as we go through life, and I am so appreciative for you reading it, first of all. um, I mean, and other people now are reacting to it in much the same way. I'm getting comments from people saying, "Well, I didn't know this. I didn't know that." Um, um, you pull me in with your stories, and that's exactly the reaction that I was hoping to get by writing this book. And so I'm thankful to you for reading it, and thankful to you for enjoying it, and relating to it. I don't know. I can't say enjoying it because there are parts in it that gave you PTSD. You say that couldn't have been enjoyable. But you could relate to it, and I think that was my objective here in writing the book. I want people to be to relate to my life as a real life, not as a fantasy.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for being on my podcast today. People, y'all know I love this book. Y'all need to get this book. It's called The Sixth Generation. It's the autobiography of Melvin Watt. It's also the story of our times. If you are a civil rights advocate, if you are an economic justice warrior, if you are a North Carolina political junkie, if you believe in, the integrity of the black man in America, you need to buy this book. You need to buy this book. And again, thank you so much for being on my show. I love this book. I,
Well, let's try to put something together in Durham so people can get closer to it. And in fact, I had a long conversation yesterday with Walter Jackson and James Williams, both of whom are trying to help me put something together and kind of so when you see them, give
Butch,
them your ideas about how we can do something in Durham to get people related to it.
is that Butch or some other James Williams?
I don't call him Butch. I just call him James Williams. I don't know him by Butch. It might be Butch. I don't know.
All right. Well, I will check with Alan. I know he was watching the podcast at one point. So I
Get
will
up
get
with
up with
Walter
him,
Jackson. He'll connect us all some kind of way.
and I hope they'll let me moderate the discussion. Love you, and thank you so much for being on this week's edition of Doing Justice Brings Joy.
Thank you for the invitation. I
And
enjoyed it immensely.
folks, next Friday is the March on Washington to defend the vote. And I hope that you all will be there. I'm going to put up some information about the March on Washington is next Friday. So we won't be doing a podcast next week because I really need you all to be in attendance at either a local event or see you on the mall in DC next Friday. Um, it's being hosted by the National Action Network and many, many, many other organizations. Again, that's the March on Washington, and let me see if I can pull that up for you to see.
You got it.
So that's the March on Washington, Defend the Vote, and that is Friday, August the 28th. And there are also many other, maybe the Divine Nine are all participating. Um, the speakers list is not been, but these are the reasons for the march. So I just again, I'm encouraging everyone to participate. We carry we carry the unfinished work forward, and so I hope that we will honor the legacy, defend the vote, protect the dream, and most importantly, that we will stand together next week in Washington, D.C. at the March on Washington. It's being hosted by Al Sharpton and Martin Luther King III. Starts at 8 o'clock, and we're very hopeful that we can get a good showing at that time. So, again, thank you for being with us this week on Doing Justice Brings Joy.